The envelope trembled in Sarah Martinez's hands as she sealed it, the soft whisper of paper against paper echoing in the cramped kitchen of her family's apartment. Outside, Miami's unforgiving summer heat pressed against the windows, like an unwelcome guest, while the ancient air conditioner rattled and wheezed in futile protest. The aroma of beans and rice, stretched to feed four for the third night in a row, mingled with the sharp scent of cleaning supplies that clung to Sarah's uniform. A cockroach scuttled across the counter, disappearing into a crack that Sarah had stuffed with steel wool last week. It hadn't worked. "Mom, are you sure we should do this?" 12-year-old Miguel peered over her shoulder, his dark eyes serious beneath. A mop of unruly hair that needed cutting, another expense they couldn't afford. "It's just a letter, mijo." Sarah smoothed Miguel's hair with calloused fingers. At 36, her face carried the weathered lines of someone a decade older, etched by years of double shifts and constant worry. Her once lustrous black hair was streaked with premature grey, pulled back in a practical ponytail. Despite everything, her posture remained proudly straight, shoulders squared against the weight of single parenthood. "But it's Elon Musk, Mom. He's like the richest guy ever. He probably gets thousands of letters." "And one more won't hurt," Sarah said with a forced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Besides, your science teacher said the contest was open to everyone." Letters to leaders isn't just for rich kids. The letter represented more than just paper and ink. Inside those carefully penned pages lay their story. Sarah's layoff from the hotel after 8 years when new owners took over, the medical bills from Miguel's asthma attack last winter, her daughter Lucia's dream of attending college slipping further away with each overdue notice. And beneath it all, the crushing silence from her ex-husband Carlos, who had walked out 3 years ago, his child support payments becoming as unreliable as Florida's afternoon storms. Across town, in the gleaming glass headquarters of SpaceX's Miami satellite office, Elon Musk scrolled through his tablet, scanning reports with the rapid efficiency that had built his empire. At 53, his features remained boyish despite the lines of concentration that permanent furrows into his brow. Dressed in a simple black t-shirt and jeans that belied his billions, he exuded the casual intensity that both inspired and intimidated those around him. "Mr. Musk, the community outreach team has the finalists for the scholarship program." Jessica Chen, his assistant for the Miami office visit, approached with measured steps. Tall and composed in her tailored grey suit, her expression revealed nothing of her nervousness at interrupting his concentration. "How many?" Musk barely looked up, his South African accent faint but present after decades in America. 20, sir, down from over 2,000 applications." "Too many. Narrow it to 5. I'll read those personally." Jessica hesitated. "Sir, we promised to consider 10-5. His tone was neither harsh nor loud, but final. "Quality over quantity. The best innovations come from focus, not spreading resources too thin." He glanced up, his gaze direct. "That's how you change the world, Jessica. Concentrate impact, not diffuse good intentions." Jessica nodded, her shoulders tensing slightly. Beneath her blazer, "Of course, Mr. Musk, I'll have the team revise the criteria. Make sure they're truly exceptional cases. I want to see real potential, not just need, and I want them on my desk by morning." As Jessica left, Musk returned to his reports, but his mind drifted momentarily. The scholarship program had been his PR team's idea, a way to soften his image. After the latest Twitter controversy, he'd agreed reluctantly, knowing that public perception affected stock prices. But philanthropy had always seemed inefficient to him, a band-aid rather than a solution. True change, he believed, came from innovation, from pushing humanity forward with electric vehicles, sustainable energy, space exploration, not handouts. Back in the Martinez apartment, Sarah slipped the letter into her purse beside her bus pass and the $20 bills she'd been saving for emergencies. Tomorrow morning, she would mail it on her way to her new job cleaning offices. A job that paid less than the hotel, but was the only one she could find after 2 months of searching. "Do you think he'll really read it?" Miguel asked, hope and doubt warring in his voice. Sarah wanted to say yes, wanted to tell her son that hard work and honesty were always rewarded, that the American dream wasn't just for those who already had everything. But she'd stopped believing in fairy tales the night Carlos had packed his bags, telling her that he needed space to find himself, leaving her to find a way to keep their children fed and housed. "I don't know, mijo," she answered honestly, pulling him into a hug. "But we have to try, right? Sometimes life surprises you." Miguel nodded against her shoulder. "I wrote about my Mars colony design. Did I tell you Ms. Williams said it was the most detailed in the class? She said I have engineer thinking." Pride momentarily pushed aside Sarah's exhaustion. "You told me, but tell me again. I love hearing about it." As Miguel launched into an enthusiastic explanation of his habitat designs, Sarah's gaze drifted to Lucia, her 17-year-old daughter, hunched over textbooks at the kitchen table. Once vivacious and quick to laugh, Lucia had grown quiet this past year, as the reality of their financial situation collided with her college aspirations. Her SAT scores had been high enough for scholarships, but not the full rides needed to make her dreams possible. Recently, Sarah had caught her researching military enlistment options. The following morning, Sarah dropped the letter into the mailbox outside the bus stop, saying a silent prayer as it disappeared from view. The prayer wasn't just for Musk to read their story, but for the strength to face another day if he didn't. 2 weeks later, in the sterile conference room of SpaceX's Miami office, Jessica Chen placed 5 folders on the table in front of Elon Musk. The finalists, as requested. Musk opened the first folder, scanning the contents with practiced efficiency. "This one's too obvious. Single mother, 3 kids, medical hardship. We'd look good helping them, but where's the innovation potential?" Her son included quite an impressive design for a Mars habitat, Jessica pointed out. The science teacher's recommendation was particularly strong. "Everyone has ideas about Mars." Next, Musk moved to the second folder. Jessica felt a flicker of frustration. "Sir, with respect, we established this program to help families with potential. The Martinez family meets all our criteria." "I'm not running a charity, Jessica. I'm investing in the future." Musk closed the folder dismissively. "These resources could fund actual Mars habitat research instead of one family's rent." "It's both, sir. These are the innovators who lack only opportunity, not ability. That was the point of this entire initiative." The point was positive PR after the board meeting. Musk's bluntness cut through the corporate veneer. "This won't move the needle." Jessica straightened her shoulders. "Perhaps you should read the boy's letter yourself before deciding." Musk's eyebrow raised slightly at her persistence. "Fine." He reopened the folder, pulling out a handwritten letter penned in careful, determined script. His eyes scanned the first lines, prepared to find the usual platitudes. Instead, he found detailed sketches of a modular Mars habitat with atmospheric processing calculations that, while amateur, showed remarkable insight for a 12-year-old. The letter spoke not of handouts, but of opportunity. A chance to prove what the boy and his family could contribute, if only given the chance to stop merely surviving. Musk's expression remained impassive, but something in the confidence of the child's designs resonated with memories of his own childhood obsessions. For a brief moment, Jessica thought she saw hesitation in his eyes. Then he closed the folder. "No. We need to focus resources where they'll have maximum impact. Select another finalist." Jessica's professional demeanor cracked slightly. "But, sir, that's my decision." Musk's tone left no room for debate. He stood, gathering his tablet. "I have a call with the Berlin team in 5 minutes." As he strode from the room, Jessica remained behind, looking down at the folder containing the Martinez family shops. Unlike her boss, she had read all of Sarah's letter, not just Miguel's. Attachment She knew about the eviction notice, about Lucia's abandoned college applications, about the night Sarah went hungry to ensure her children ate. And she knew something else, something that might have changed even Elon Musk's calculating mind if he'd read further. Miguel Martinez had independently developed a cooling system design that, while crude, echoed principles SpaceX engineers were currently exploring for Mars missions. But the decision had been made. The letter would be returned. With the standard rejection form letter, another door closed on the Martinez family. At that same moment, across town, Sarah Martinez stood before her apartment manager, explaining through a tight throat why her rent would be 5 days late this month. Behind her closed eyelids, she pictured the letter she'd written, wondering if it had even been opened, or if it sat in some assistant's slush pile. Another dreamer's words lost in the noise of a world that moved too fast to notice those being left behind. Sarah Martinez's legs ached as she trudged up the 4 flights of stairs to her apartment. The elevator had been out of service for 3 weeks now, another broken promise from the building management. Her double shift at the office complex had run late after the night supervisor had asked her to clean the executive bathrooms that weren't on her regular schedule. Saying no wasn't an option, not when jobs were scarce, and her family's survival balanced on the knife edge of her paycheck. The hallway lights flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced along the peeling wallpaper. Somewhere down the corridor, a baby wailed, its cries mingling with the thump of bass from another apartment and the perpetual argument from 4C that served as the building's unwelcome soundtrack. Inside her mind, Sarah replayed the rejection over and over. It had arrived 3 days ago, a crisp white envelope with the SpaceX logo, containing a single paragraph of corporate sympathy wrapped in phrases like "regrettably inform you" and "many qualified applicants." She hadn't shown it to Miguel yet. The disappointment in his eyes was something she couldn't bear to face, not tonight. It was stupid to hope, she whispered to herself, fumbling with her keys. Stupid to think someone like Elon Musk would care about people like us. When she finally pushed open the door, the apartment was unusually quiet. Normally, Miguel would be bubbling about his day, or Lucia would be playing music as she studied. Tonight, a heavy silence greeted her. "Kids?" Sarah called, dropping her purse on the small table by the door, wincing as her shoulder protested the day's strain. Lucia appeared. From the bedroom, her expression unreadable. At 17, she was already a woman in so many ways, forced to mature faster than any child should. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, her t-shirt worn but clean. "Mum, there's something you need to see." Sarah's heart plummeted. "The eviction notice? Did they post it already? I told Mr. Guzman I'd have the money by Friday." "No, it's not that." Lucia hesitated. "It's just come look." She led Sarah to their small living room, where Miguel sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by papers and their ancient laptop, a refurbished model donated by his school that wheezed and struggled with even basic functions. The boy's eyes were wide, his face flushed with an excitement Sarah hadn't seen in months. "Mom, you're not going to believe this." He jumped up, nearly knocking over the stack of notebooks beside him. "Jessica Chen called." "Who?" Sarah frowned. The name meaningless to her exhausted mind. "From SpaceX, Mr. Musk's assistant. She said he didn't actually read my whole letter, but she did, and she thought my Mars habitat design was really good, especially my cooling system, and she wants to meet with us." Sarah slowly sank onto their threadbare couch, the implications refusing to compute in her fatigued brain. "Wait, slow down. Someone from SpaceX called you? When? How did they get our number?" "I put it in the letter," Miguel explained, words tumbling out in a rush. "She called this afternoon while Lucia was here. She said that even though we didn't get selected for the scholarship program, she wants to talk to us about something else. She's coming here tomorrow, to our apartment." Alarm replaced confusion. Here, tomorrow. Sarah looked around at their modest home, the water stain on the ceiling, the mismatched furniture, the cramped space that showcased their poverty in merciless detail. Why would she come here? Lucia sat beside her mother. She wouldn't say exactly, just that she was impressed with Miguel's designs and wanted to discuss an opportunity with us personally. She seemed really nice, Mom. Not fake nice, but actually interested. Sarah ran a hand over her face. This doesn't make sense. We got a rejection letter. It's over. But that's the thing, Miguel insisted, pushing a wrinkled printout into her hands. I kept working on my designs after we sent the letter. I made them better. I posted them on my science class blog, and somehow she saw them. She said they were innovative and showed remarkable intuition. Those were her exact words. Sarah stared at the complex diagrams her son had created. She recognized his artistic talent, but couldn't follow the technical aspects. Her eyes caught on a note scrawled in the margin, "For Mom, so we can have a real home someday." Something in her chest tightened painfully. "What time is she coming?" she asked finally. 4:00. She said she's coming on her own time, not as part of her official job. Lucia's voice held a caution that betrayed her own suspicion of unexpected generosity. Sarah nodded slowly. "Then we have cleaning to do." The next day, Sarah called in sick for the first time in 2 years. Her supervisor's displeasure crackled through the phone, but she held firm. Some things were more important than one day's pay, even in their precarious situation. The morning and early afternoon disappeared in a frenzy of cleaning, organizing, and nervous preparation. At precisely 4:00, a knock sounded at their door. Miguel froze in the act of straightening his science fair certificates on the wall. Lucia stopped adjusting the mismatched cups on their small dining table. Sarah smoothed her best blouse, the one she saved for parent-teacher conferences, and opened the door. Jessica Chen stood in the hallway, her professional appearance softened by a genuine smile. In her tailored navy pantsuit and light makeup, she exuded a confident competence that immediately made Sarah conscious of every frayed edge and worn surface in their home. "Mrs. Martinez, I'm Jessica Chen from SpaceX. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me." Sarah shook the offered hand. "It's Ms., actually, and please, come in." As Jessica entered their apartment, her eyes took in the space with a quick, assessing glance that missed nothing but judged nothing. Sarah braced herself for the polite condescension she'd grown accustomed to from professionals centering her world, the charitable smiles that never quite reached their eyes. Instead, Jessica's attention immediately focused on Miguel, who stood awkwardly by his science projects. "You must be Miguel. Your habitat designs are what brought me here." Her smile widened genuinely. "I hope you don't mind, but I showed them to our engineering team. They were quite impressed." Miguel's eyes widened. "Really? Actual SpaceX engineers saw my drawings? They did more than see them. They had questions." Jessica placed her sleek leather portfolio on the table. "Technical questions about your cooling system design. It's similar to something they've been working on, but your approach has an elegant simplicity they found intriguing." Sarah felt a strange mixture of maternal pride and protective suspicion. "I'm sorry, but I'm still not clear on why you're here." The rejection letter was very final. Jessica's expression shifted, something like embarrassment crossing her features. "About that, Mr. Musk made his decision based on incomplete information. He didn't read Miguel's technical attachments, only the summary page of your application." She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "I disagreed with his assessment, and while I can't reverse his decision on the scholarship program, I believe there's another way forward here." Lucia, who had been quietly observing from the kitchen doorway, finally spoke. "What kind of way forward?" Jessica opened her portfolio and removed several documents. "I'd like to offer Miguel a place in SpaceX's Young Innovators Mentorship Program. It's normally limited to employees' children, but I have discretionary spots I can allocate. It includes weekly virtual sessions with Our engineers and a small stipend for educational materials. Miguel gasped. Are you serious? Very serious. Jessica's gaze met Sarah's. Your son has a remarkable mind, Ms. Martinez, the kind we're always searching for at SpaceX, the kind that sees solutions where others see only problems. Sarah felt the tears threatening and blinked them back fiercely. That's incredibly generous. But why would you do this? You don't know us. Jessica was quiet for a moment, her professional demeanor slipping to reveal something more personal. I grew up in a neighborhood not unlike this one in Houston. My father cleaned office buildings at night while my mother worked retail during the day. When I was 14, a science teacher noticed I had a knack for mathematics and fought for me to get opportunities. Without her, I would never have made it to MIT, never ended up at SpaceX. She straightened the papers before her. Sometimes all it takes is one person to see potential and open a door. Today, I'm that person for Miguel. Does Mr. Musk know you're doing this? Lucia asked pointedly. A small, enigmatic smile curved Jessica's lips. Let's just say I'm taking initiative. Mr. Musk appreciates results, not permission-seeking. If Miguel shows promise in the program, and I believe he will, Mr. Musk will hear about it when the time is right. Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced. In years, the lightness of hope, dangerous and precious. What would Miguel need to do? Commit to the program. Work hard. Continue developing his ideas. Jessica turned to Miguel. Can you do that? The boy nodded solemnly. Yes, ma'am, I promise. Good. Then let's get started. Jessica handed Sarah a tablet. This contains all the program information, schedule, and a digital contract. The stipend is modest, $500 per month, but it should help with internet access and any materials Miguel needs. Sarah's hand trembled slightly as she accepted the device. $500 was the difference between making rent or facing eviction, between keeping the electricity on or studying by candlelight. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Say yes, Jessica replied simply, and then help your son change the world. As Jessica began explaining the program details to an enraptured Miguel, Lucia moved to stand beside her mother, slipping an arm around her waist in silent support. Do you think this is real? Sarah murmured, still unable to fully trust this unexpected turn of events. Lucia squeezed her mother's shoulder. I think Miguel has a chance now, a real one. Outside their window, Miami's relentless sun began its descent, painting the sky in fiery oranges and reds. For the first time in years, Sarah allowed herself to imagine a future beyond survival. One where Miguel's brilliance found its purpose, where Lucia's college dreams revived, where the weight on her own shoulders might lighten, if only a little. It wasn't the hand of Elon Musk that had reached out to them after all, but rather someone who recognized herself in their struggle. Sometimes kindness came from unexpected directions, and hope bloomed in the most unlikely soil. The cafeteria at Henderson Middle School buzzed with the controlled chaos of lunch period. Miguel sat alone at his usual corner table, hunched over. His tablet, the new one Jessica had arranged for him through the Young Innovators program. 3 weeks had passed since her visit, and Miguel's life had transformed in ways he couldn't have imagined. Is that the Mars stuff again? Damon Washington dropped his lunch tray across from Miguel with a clatter. Tall and lanky with close-cropped hair, Damon was Miguel's closest friend, possibly his only friend, in a school where academic enthusiasm was often met with suspicion. Miguel nodded without looking up. I'm refining the atmospheric processor design. My mentor says my calculations were off by 3.2%. Your mentor? Damon echoed with a mixture of awe and friendly mockery. Still can't believe you've got actual rocket scientists helping you with homework. It's not homework, Miguel corrected automatically. It's independent research. Across the cafeteria, a group of 8th graders nudged each other, looking in Miguel's direction. Since word had spread about his SpaceX connection, the social dynamics had shifted. The teasing hadn't stopped. If anything, it had intensified from some corners, but it now carried an undercurrent of uncertain respect. Martinez, Tyler Reeves, the 8th grade ringleader, called out, "When you're living on Mars, don't forget to send us some alien pets." His friends laughed on cue, but there was less malice than before. Even they couldn't deny the impressiveness of Miguel's situation. "Ignore them," Damon muttered, biting into his sandwich. "I always do." Miguel finally looked up, his eyes bright with excitement rather than hurt. "Guess what? Jessica's arranging for me to visit the actual SpaceX facility next month. A real tour, with engineers and everything." Damon's jaw dropped. "For real? That's insane." Miguel's response was interrupted by Ms. Williams, his science teacher, approaching their table. In her early 30s, with curly hair and perpetually ink-stained fingers, she'd been the first to recognize Miguel's potential, encouraging him to enter the Letters to Leaders contest in the first place. "Miguel, do you have a moment?" Her voice carried a barely concealed excitement. "Yes, Ms. Williams." She glanced around before continuing in a lower voice. "I just got off the phone with the district science coordinator. They want to feature your habitat designs at the county STEM Expo next month. This is huge. Usually only high schoolers get featured." Miguel's eyes widened. "But I didn't enter the expo competition." Jessica Chen contacted them directly. "Apparently SpaceX is sponsoring a special innovation booth, and they want you as the centerpiece." Ms. Williams squeezed his shoulder. "This could mean scholarship opportunities, Miguel. Real loans." As Ms. Williams departed, Damon whistled low. "Dude, you're famous." Miguel shook his head, still processing. "It's happening so fast. Your mom must be freaking out." A shadow crossed Miguel's face. "She's cautious. Says we shouldn't count on any of this lasting." In truth, Sarah Martinez had spent the past 3 weeks waiting for the other shoe to drop. Each morning, she expected to receive a call saying there had been a mistake, that the stipend had been terminated, that the dream was over. Even as Miguel flourished under the mentorship program, even as the money helped ease their most immediate financial pressures, Sarah maintained a wary distance from hope. Across town, in the gleaming coastal offices of SpaceX Miami, Jessica Chen stood before Elon Musk in his minimalist office. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows behind him, rockets being assembled in the massive hangar were visible in the distance. The quarterly community impact report, as requested. Jessica placed a sleek folder on his desk. Musk flipped through it with brisk efficiency, his focus more on the metrics than the stories behind them. Launch. Education program up 18%. STEM grants increased. Good. Public sentiment metrics up 12 points since the last Twitter incident. A faint smile ghosted across his features. Not bad. The board will be pleased. Jessica hesitated, then pressed forward. "Sir, there's an additional initiative I'd like to highlight. The Young Innovators Mentorship has identified an exceptional talent, a 12-year-old boy named Miguel Martinez." Musk's eyes narrowed slightly. "Martinez? Why is that name familiar?" His family applied for the scholarship program last month. They weren't selected in the final round. Recognition dawned. "The Mars habitat designs. You brought them up in the meeting." "Yes, sir. I took the liberty of enrolling Miguel in our mentorship program. His progress has been remarkable. Our engineering team believes his atmospheric processing design has potential commercial applications." Musk's attention sharpened instantly. "Commercial applications. The approach he's developed, it's unconventional but efficient. Jacob in R&D thinks it could reduce energy consumption in our life support systems by up to 20% if the preliminary models hold." Musk leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled before him. And this came from a middle schooler. A middle schooler with extraordinary intuition for systems design. Sometimes the fresh perspective sees what experts miss, Musk finished. It was one of his own frequently quoted principles. I want to see the designs myself, and a cost-benefit analysis on implementing his approach versus our current models. Jessica felt a flutter of victory. I'll have them on your desk this afternoon. And this boy, is he receiving adequate resources? The standard stipend for the program. It's helping his family stay afloat, but double it, Musk interrupted. If there's commercial potential here, I want him focused, not worried about basic necessities. Jessica couldn't hide her surprise. Sir, it's an investment, not charity, Musk clarified, his pragmatism reasserting itself. Have legal draw up the appropriate intellectual property agreements, standard junior innovator terms, and I want weekly progress reports. Yes, sir. There's one more thing. The County STEM Expo next month. I've arranged for Miguel to showcase his worker tour sponsored booth. Musk nodded absently, already reaching for his phone. Fine. Make sure our PR team maximizes the exposure. If his designs prove valuable, I want his story front and center in our community. Impact narrative. As Jessica left Musk's office, a small smile played at her lips. She had gambled on Miguel's talent, capturing her boss's interest, and it had paid off. Though predictably, Musk saw the situation through the lens of business advantage rather than social responsibility. The outcome, however, would be the same: life-changing support for the Martinez family. Back at the Martinez apartment, Sarah sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by bills. The SpaceX stipend had allowed her to catch up on their most pressing debts, but years of financial hardship had created a deep hole. Still, for the first time in recent memory, she could see a path forward. A knock at the door interrupted her calculations. Sarah opened it to find Mrs. Patel, their elderly neighbor from across the hall, holding a covered dish. I made too much. Biryani, Mrs. Patel announced, though both women knew this was a ritual kindness rather than an accident. Since Carlos left, Mrs. Patel had appeared regularly with extra food, refusing any thanks. Miguel told me the good news, the older woman continued as Sarah accepted the dish. Such a brilliant boy, that own. Always knew he was special. Sarah smiled tiredly. He is. I just hope all this attention doesn't disappear as quickly as it came. Mrs. Patel clicked her tongue disapprovingly. Why do you always expect the worst, Beta? Sometimes good things happen. Not in my experience, Sarah replied, the words escaping before she could censor them. Mrs. Patel's expression softened. When my husband died, leaving me alone in a new country with 2 small children, I thought the same. But look, my daughter is a doctor now, my son a professor, and you, with your fighter's heart, you will see better days too. After Mrs. Patel left, Sarah found herself drawn to Miguel's bedroom. The space had transformed over the past weeks. SpaceX. Posters covered the walls. Complex diagrams were pinned everywhere, and the new tablet sat charging on his meticulously organized desk. In the corner stood his pride and joy, a small 3D printer provided by the program, currently humming as it produced a scale model of his latest design. Sarah picked up one of the completed models, turning it in her hands. She couldn't understand the science behind it, but she recognized the passion and brilliance that had created it. Her son was extraordinary, something she'd always known, but that the world was only now discovering. The front door opened with a burst of teenage energy as Lucia arrived home from school. "Mom!" she called. "You won't believe it!" Sarah emerged from Miguel's room to find her daughter practically vibrating with excitement, clutching a letter. What happened? Miami-Dade Community College. They're offering me a full scholarship. Lucia thrust the paper forward. The STEM department dean saw the article about Miguel in the local paper, and there was a mention about me wanting to study engineering too. He reached out to my guidance counselor, and they fast-tracked an application. Sarah's hands trembled as she read the letter. It was real. A full 2-year scholarship with a pathway to transfer to the University of Miami afterward. It says the scholarship is part of their Future Innovators program, in partnership with local technology companies, Lucia continued breathlessly. But my counselor said it's new, and she thinks it might have been created just for me after the SpaceX connection became public. Mom, this changes everything. Sarah sank onto the couch, the letter still clutched in her hand. The ripples from Jessica's intervention were spreading beyond Miguel, touching Lucia's future now too. I can stay home and help with expenses while going to school, Lucia was saying, plans already forming. And since the campus is close, I can be here for Miguel when you're working. It's perfect. Sarah looked at her daughter, this beautiful, responsible young woman who had been prepared to sacrifice her dreams to help keep their family afloat. Now her eyes shone with the returned light of possibility. When does it start? Sarah asked softly. Fall semester. I have to maintain a 3.5 GPA, but that's no problem. Sarah rose and pulled Lucia into a tight embrace. I'm so proud of you, so proud of both of you. Over Lucia's shoulder, Sarah's gaze fell on the family photo still displayed on their wall, the 4 of them in happier times, before Carlos left. She had kept it up for the children's sake, a reminder of completeness now lost. But perhaps their family wasn't broken after all, just transformed into something different but equally whole. For the first time, Sarah allowed herself to fully feel the hope she'd been guarding against. The world was noticing her children, valuing them as she always had. The future that had seemed so constricted was expanding with each passing day, brightened by unexpected kindness and well-earned recognition. The changes had begun with Jessica Chen's choice to see beyond rejection, to recognize potential where others saw only need. Now those ripples were touching shores Sarah hadn't dared to imagine reaching. The SpaceX facility loomed before them, a gleaming monument to innovation and ambition. Sarah's aging Honda wheezed into the visitor parking space, the contrast between their vehicle and the sleek Tesla surrounding it not lost in her. Miguel practically vibrated in the passenger seat, while Lucia peered through the window with poorly concealed awe from the back. Remember what we discussed, Sarah said, smoothing her best blouse, purchased just yesterday from a discount store. For this occasion, be respectful, don't touch anything without permission, and say thank you about 100 times, Miguel finished with a grin. I know, Mom. Sarah reached over to straighten his collar. This is a big opportunity. Me go. I just want everything to go perfectly. It will, Lucia assured her, checking her reflection in her phone camera. At 17, she navigated the line between child and adult with increasing confidence, especially since her scholarship news. Miguel's designs impressed them enough to invite us. They already like him. As they approached the entrance, Jessica Chen emerged to greet them, professional as always in her tailored pantsuit, yet with genuine warmth in her smile. The Martinez family! Welcome to SpaceX Miami! She shook Sarah's hand, then Miguel's with equal seriousness. We're excited to have you here today. Thank you for arranging this, Sarah said, fighting to keep her voice steady. The past month had brought changes she still couldn't fully trust. The doubled stipend that had arrived without explanation, Lucia's scholarship, and now this personal tour of a facility most people only saw in news reports. Jessica guided them through security, where they received visitor badges with their photos already printed, as if their coming had been preparation-worthy. The engineering team is particularly looking forward to meeting Miguel. Your atmospheric processor redesign has generated quite a buzz. Miguel's eyes widened. Really? Really, Jessica confirmed. In fact, there's someone else who's interested in your work. She hesitated briefly. Mr. Musk is in the facility today. He's requested to meet with you. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. Elon Musk? Today? But I'm not prepared to— Just be yourselves, Jessica assured her. He appreciates authenticity, and he's genuinely interested in Miguel's innovations. As they entered the main building, the immensity of the operation unfolded before them. Enormous hangars housed rocket components in various stages of assembly. Engineers huddled around workstations, while massive screens displayed schematics and data streams. It was a world away from their cramped apartment, a testament to what human ingenuity and billions of dollars could accomplish. "This is incredible," Lucia whispered, her fingers itching for her notebook to sketch what she was seeing. Miguel moved as if in a dream, his eyes darting everywhere, absorbing details with the hungry curiosity that characterized him. "Is that the Falcon Heavy booster?" he asked, pointing toward a massive cylindrical structure. Jessica nodded. "Good eye. That's the next-generation version." They were led through laboratories and design studios, each stop revealing technologies that seemed pulled from science fiction. Throughout the tour, various engineers greeted Miguel by name, referencing specific aspects of his designs with collegial respect. Though only 12, he responded with surprising technical precision, occasionally correcting assumptions or explaining his reasoning. Sarah watched her son in silent amazement. In this environment, surrounded by people who spoke his language, of innovation and possibility, Miguel seemed transformed, more confident, more articulate, more himself than she had ever seen him. "Mom, they're using a variation of my cooling system in their prototype," he exclaimed after one particularly animated discussion with a propulsion engineer. "They said it might reduce energy consumption by 22%. Sarah smiled, even as she struggled to follow the technical concepts. "That's wonderful, mijo." After nearly 2 hours, Jessica led them to a sleek conference room overlooking the rocket assembly area. "Mr. Musk will meet you here. Would anyone like something to drink before he arrives?" The Martinez family declined, too nervous for refreshments. As Jessica stepped out to notify Musk of their readiness, Sarah straightened Miguel's shirt again and whispered last-minute reminders about manners. "Mom," Miguel protested gently, "I've got this." Lucia squeezed her mother's hand supportively. "We all do." The conference room door opened, and Elon Musk strode in with characteristic purpose. In person, he seemed both larger than life and surprisingly normal, a contradiction Sarah hadn't expected. He wore simple dark jeans and a black shirt with the SpaceX logo, his expression alert and assessing. "The Martinez family," he said, his accent lightly coloring the words. "Thank you for coming." Sarah rose quickly, extending her hand. "Mr. Musk, we're grateful for the invitation. This is an incredible honor." His handshake was firm but brief, his attention already shifting to Miguel. "So you're the young engineer who designed our atmospheric processor?" Miguel swallowed hard. "Yes, sir. Though I didn't know I was redesigning yours specifically. I was just trying to solve the efficiency problems in the models I'd studied." A hint of a smile touched Musk's lips. "Sometimes the best innovations come from those who don't know what's supposedly impossible." He gestured to the chairs. "Let's sit. I have some questions about your approach." What followed was a technical discussion that left Sarah and Lucia largely as observers. Musk fired questions at Miguel in rapid succession, challenging assumptions, probing for weaknesses in the design. Rather than intimidating him, the interrogations seemed to energize Miguel. He responded thoughtfully, sometimes conceding limitations and other times defending his choices with surprising confidence. "The conventional wisdom says your recirculation system would create too much back pressure," Musk noted, tapping his tablet. Where Miguel's design was displayed, "Conventional wisdom assumes standard valve configurations," Miguel countered, reaching for a digital stylus. "May I?" Musk handed over his tablet, and Miguel quickly sketched a modification. "If you offset the intake like this and add a secondary release valve here, the pressure distributes more evenly." Musk studied the adjustment, his expression inscrutable. Then he looked up at Miguel with new intensity. "Who taught you fluid dynamics?" "No, informally. Miguel admitted. I watch a lot of MIT OpenCourseWare videos, and I experiment with simulations on the computer you provided. Musk leaned back, his gaze shifting to include Sarah now. Miss Martinez, your son has an exceptional mind. The kind that sees patterns and possibilities others miss. Pride warred with caution in Sarah's heart. Thank you. He's always been curious, always taking things apart to understand them. And putting them back together better, Lucia added. That's a rare gift, Musk said, one that should be nurtured properly. He turned to Jessica, who had re-entered the room quietly. Where are we on the expanded program proposal? Jessica smoothly produced a folder. The documentation is prepared, as discussed. Musk nodded and returned his attention to the Martinez family. I'd like to propose an expansion of Miguel's participation in our innovation ecosystem. Beyond the mentorship program, we want to include him in actual development projects with appropriate compensation and educational support. Sarah felt her throat tighten. What exactly does that mean? It means SpaceX would like to formally contract with Miguel for his intellectual contributions, Jessica explained. He would work with our engineering team remotely, with monthly in-person sessions. The stipend would increase substantially, and we'd establish an educational trust for both Miguel and Lucia's future studies. And what would you expect in return? Sarah asked, years of hard-earned suspicion evident in her tone. If Musk was offended by her directness, he didn't show it. Creativity, commitment, and the intellectual property rights to innovations developed. During the collaboration, he leaned forward slightly. Ms. Martinez, let me be direct. Your son's mind is an asset, one that could benefit humanity's push toward becoming multiplanetary. I'm offering a pathway that develops his talent while providing financial stability for your family. I'm offering an investment, not charity, he added, as if reading her thoughts. Sarah's gaze dropped to the gleaming conference table, emotions warring within her. The practical benefits were undeniable. Security for her children, opportunities, beyond anything she could provide alone. Yet something in her resisted, some deep-seated fear of dependency, of allowing hope too fully into her heart. Mom, Miguel said softly, this is what I want. This is what I'm good at. We should discuss this privately, Sarah began. Actually, Musk interrupted, there's one more element to consider. He nodded to Jessica, who opened the door. A man entered, his presence immediately filling the room with a different kind of tension. Tall and distinguished in his late 50s, with silver-streaked dark hair and wire-rimmed glasses, he carried himself with the quiet authority of academia. This is Dr. James Rodriguez from MIT's Aerospace Engineering Department, Jessica introduced. He's flown in specifically to meet Miguel. Dr. Rodriguez smiled warmly. It's a pleasure to meet you all. I've reviewed Miguel's designs extensively, and I must say, I'm profoundly impressed. Dr. Rodriguez oversees MIT's Early Exceptional Talent Program, Musk explained. A pathway for uniquely gifted students to access university-level resources before formal college admission. Sarah looked between the two men, understanding dawning. You want to take my son to Massachusetts? Not immediately, Dr. Rodriguez clarified. The program begins with remote learning components. Miguel would continue living at home, attending regular school supplemented by our curriculum. Summer intensives on campus would follow, leading eventually to early college admission if that path makes sense for him. MIT, Miguel whispered, awe etching his features, with a full scholarship commitment, Musk added. For both Miguel and Lucia, should she choose MIT for her studies after community college. Lucia gasped softly beside her mother. Sarah felt the room spinning slightly. From desperate prayers over past due notices to MIT scholarships in the span of weeks, it seemed impossible, dangerous to believe. Why, she asked finally, looking directly at Musk. Why all this for one family you don't even know? Musk's expression remained impassive, but something flickered in his eyes. recognition, perhaps, of the fear behind her question. Because talent is evenly distributed, but opportunity is not, he said simply. Your son solved a problem my highly paid engineers were struggling with, using limited resources and self-taught knowledge. Imagine what he could accomplish with proper support. He paused. This isn't generosity, Ms. Martinez. It's pragmatism. The world needs minds like Miguel's, focused eyes bright with renewed hope. Then back to Musk, the billionaire whose rejection letter she had cried over just weeks ago. We would need time to consider all this, she said finally. Of course, Musk replied. Jessica will provide all the documentation for your review. Take a week to decide. As they prepared to leave, Musk addressed Miguel directly once more. Whatever path you choose, keep solving problems. The world has plenty that need fixing. Miguel nodded solemnly. Yes, sir, I will. Outside in the parking lot, the Florida sun beat down on their weathered Honda, now seeming like a relic from another lifetime. The gleaming SpaceX facility rose behind them, a testament to what human ambition could build. Mom? Miguel asked, hesitantly. What do you think? Sarah gazed at her children, these miraculous beings she had raised alone through years of struggle. For so long, her love had expressed itself through protection, from disappointment, from false hopes, from a world that seemed determined to limit their possibilities. Perhaps now loving them meant something different. Perhaps it meant opening the door to opportunity, even if that door led to places she couldn't follow or fully understand. I think, she said carefully, that we have a lot to talk about when we get home. The coffee shop nestled in the Wynwood. Arts District hummed with the gentle cacophony of Miami life, conversations in English and Spanish, blending with the hiss of espresso machines and the occasional burst of laughter. It was neutral territory, far from both the sleek corporate world of SpaceX and the Martinez family's apartment complex. Sarah arrived 15 minutes early, a habit born from years of service jobs where tardiness meant termination. She chose a small table near the back, where exposed brick walls featured rotating artwork from local painters. Today, vibrant murals of space and cosmic imagery adorned the space, a coincidence that made her smile despite her nervousness. She ordered a simple black coffee, the least expensive item on the artisanal menu. When the barista placed the steaming mug before her, its rich aroma briefly transported her to childhood mornings in her grandmother's kitchen in Hialeah, where Café Cubano had been a daily ritual. At precisely noon, the door opened, and Elon Musk entered. Without his entourage or the backdrop of his technological empire, he seemed almost ordinary. A tall man in a simple black t-shirt and jeans, his attention focused on his phone. Yet the ripple of recognition that moved through the cafe confirmed his unmistakable presence. Conversations paused mid-sentence, heads turned, and several patrons discreetly reached for their phones to capture evidence of the billionaire in their midst. Sarah raised her hand slightly, and Musk spotted her, navigating between tables with purposeful strides. Ms. Martinez, he greeted, extending his hand. Thank you for agreeing to meet. And Sarah, please, she responded, her grip firm despite her internal trepidation. A barista appeared almost instantly at their table. Mr. Musk, it's an honor to have you here. What can I get you? Whatever has the most caffeine, he replied with a hint of a smile. Double it. When the starstruck employee departed, Musk settled into his chair, his posture relaxed yet alert. I appreciate you taking time away from work for this conversation. The office building manager was surprisingly accommodating when I mentioned who I was meeting, Sarah admitted. Apparently, being associated with you has certain advantages. Fame is just leverage, Musk replied pragmatically. Sometimes useful, often annoying. An awkward silence settled between them, two people from vastly different worlds, connected by the brilliant mind of a 12-year-old boy. Jessica told me you haven't signed the agreement yet, Musk finally said, placing his phone face down on the table. I'd like to understand your hesitation. Sarah took a careful sip of her coffee, gathering her thoughts. Mr. Musk. Elon, please. Elon, she corrected, the name feeling strange on her tongue. I've spent the past decade protecting my children. If from disappointment, from getting their hopes up only to have reality crash down on them, she met his gaze directly. The opportunity you're offering seems too extraordinary to be real. Most extraordinary things seem impossible until they're accomplished, he responded, like landing rockets vertically or making electric cars that people actually want to drive. The barista returned with Musk's coffee, an enormous concoction that appeared to contain several espresso shots. He thanked her and turned back to Sarah. But I understand skepticism. It's rational. What specific concerns do you have about the arrangement? Sarah had rehearsed this conversation countless times in her mind over the past week. First, Miguel is 12. His interests may change. What happens if 6 months from now he decides he's passionate about marine biology instead of Mars habitats? Then we adapt, Musk answered without hesitation. The educational trust remains regardless. The stipend continues through the academic year. And if he has brilliant ideas about marine biology, I know people at oceanographic institutes. And what about control? Sarah pressed. These contracts, they're complicated. I've been reading them, trying to understand what rights we're giving up. Musk nodded appreciatively. You should be cautious about what you sign. The intellectual property clauses apply only to innovations directly related to space technology, developed with SpaceX resources. Miguel retains rights to anything else he creates, and all educational decisions remain with you as his parent. Sarah's fingers tightened around her mug. But there's the publicity aspect. I've already seen Miguel's name in local papers. I'm worried about him becoming some kind of corporate mascot. A valid concern, Musk acknowledged. I can have Jessica revise the media provisions to require your explicit approval for any public mention of Miguel. His development as an engineer matters more to me than PR opportunities. The directness of his responses was disarming. Sarah had expected corporate doublespeak, not straightforward problem-solving. May I ask a personal question? Musk said unexpectedly. Sarah nodded cautiously. What did you dream of doing before life took you on this path? The question caught her off guard. I wanted to be an architect. I used to sketch buildings, imagine spaces that could make people feel safe and inspired at the same time. A sad smile crossed her face. But then came relationships, children, responsibilities. Dreams got smaller, more immediate. Pay the rent, keep the lights on, make sure the kids have food. Musk was quiet for a moment, studying her with unexpected intensity. My mother raised 3 children largely on her own in South Africa after my parents divorced. She worked multiple jobs, made sacrifices I didn't fully understand until I was much older. He took a sip of his coffee. She never stopped believing her children could accomplish extraordinary things, even when it seemed completely irrational. Sarah was surprised by this glimpse of personal history from a man known for focusing on the future rather than the past. Miguel has your determination, Musk continued. I saw it in how he defended his designs. That comes from watching you never give up year after year. I just did what any parent would do, Sarah said softly. No, Musk countered. Many would have broken under the pressures you faced. Your resilience is as remarkable as Miguel's intelligence, and the two are not unrelated. The barista approached again, tentatively placing a plate of pastries on their table. On the house, she whispered, before retreating quickly. Musk regarded the offering with amusement. Another perk of notoriety, though I suspect they're hoping for a social media mention. To Sarah's surprise, he pushed the plate toward her. Please have one. I rarely eat during the day. She hesitated, then selected a small croissant. As she took a bite of the buttery pastry, a luxury she hadn't allowed herself in years, She studied the man across from her. Behind the public persona of the mercurial billionaire innovator, she glimpsed something unexpected, a fundamental pragmatism that she recognized in herself. "You know," she said finally, "when I first read about you years ago, I thought we couldn't possibly have anything in common. You were building rockets and electric cars, and I was figuring out how to stretch a package of ground beef for 3 meals. Different problems, same approach," Musk replied. "Break it down to first principles. Determine what's essential, eliminate waste, optimize resources." He shrugged slightly. "You've been engineering solutions your whole life, just with different materials." The observation resonated with Sarah in ways she hadn't expected. She had never framed her daily struggles as problems to be solved rather than burdens to be carried. "There's something else that's been bothering me," she admitted. "The letter, the one Miguel and I sent originally, you rejected it." "I made a mistake," Musk said simply. "I didn't review the technical attachments thoroughly enough. Jessica was right and I was wrong." The blunt acknowledgement of error from one of the world's most powerful men was startling. "Not many people in your position would admit that," Sarah observed. "Being wedded to past decisions is inefficient. When presented with better information, I change course." He leaned forward slightly. "The same applies here. Your initial impression of me was based on limited information. I'm offering you more data. Now," a small smile tugged at Sarah's lips, "is this how you talk to everyone, in terms of data and efficiency?" "Generally," he admitted, "though my children tell me it's not always the most emotionally satisfying approach." "You have children?" The realization that this tech titan was also a parent had somehow never crossed her mind. "5 sons and a daughter. They're my most important project, though I don't always succeed at balancing everything perfectly." This glimpse of vulnerability, of ordinary parental struggle from an extraordinary man, shifted something in Sarah's perception. "What would you do if it were your child?" she asked suddenly. "Truly?" Musk considered the question with genuine seriousness. "I would evaluate the opportunity against the risks. I would ensure protections were in place, and then I would let them fly." His gaze met hers directly. "Talent like Miguel's needs space to grow." Sarah looked down at her nearly empty coffee cup. "I'm scared," she admitted quietly. "Not. Too much protection can become its own kind of cage." Sarah looked down at her nearly empty coffee cup. "I'm scared," she admitted quietly. "Not just of things going wrong, but of things going right. Of Miguel moving into a world I don't understand, where I can't guide him." "You'll always be his mother," Musk said with unexpected gentleness. "That matters more than any mentor or opportunity I can provide. My own mother, she couldn't help me code or build rockets, but her belief in me was the foundation everything else was built upon." From his pocket, he withdrew a small object and placed it on the table between them. It was a crude rocket shape, made from wood and painted silver, clearly handcrafted by a child. "I made this when I was 10. My mother kept it all these years and gave it back to me when SpaceX landed its first rocket. She said she always knew I would make the dream real someday." His fingers rested briefly on the small toy. "Your belief in Miguel has gotten him this far. Let me help with the next part of the journey." In that small, unexpected artifact, Sarah saw the thread connecting the boy who had crafted it to her own son, the dreamers who saw possibilities others missed, who built tomorrow in their minds before it existed in reality. "I'll need the contracts revised as we discussed," she said finally, "and I want it in writing that family comes first. School events, holidays, his sister's activities, no matter how exciting the project is." Musk nodded, the hint of a smile touching his lips. "I assume you'll want those terms to be legally binding." "Absolutely," Sarah confirmed. "Jessica will have the revisions to you by tomorrow." He extended his hand across the table. "Do we have an agreement, Sarah Martinez?" As her hand met his, Sarah felt the weight of the moment. this unlikely intersection of worlds, this bridge being built between different realities. She thought of Miguel's face when he talked about Mars, of Lucia's renewed hope for college, of the burden that had lightened across her own shoulders. "We do," she said firmly, her handshake sealing a future she had never dared to imagine. Above them, painted stars spiraled across the cafe ceiling, distant worlds that somehow felt a little closer now. 3 months passed with the swift intensity of a Florida summer storm. The Martinez apartment had transformed, not through expensive renovations or new furniture, but through the energy that now permeated its walls. The kitchen table had become command central, covered with textbooks, design printouts, and the ever-present tablet computers that connected their modest home to MIT's virtual classrooms and SpaceX's engineering servers. Today, that table was cleared for a special occasion. A simple cloth covered its scratched surface, and Sarah's mismatched plates had been arranged with unusual care. The aroma of picadillo, Miguel's favorite, wafted from the kitchen, where Sarah added final touches to the first celebratory dinner they'd hosted in years. "Mom, they're here!" Miguel called, peering through the window. His voice cracked slightly, one of many changes the past months had brought as adolescence arrived, alongside opportunity. Sarah wiped her hands on a dish towel, surveying her small domain with a critical eye. The apartment was clean but unmistakably modest, nothing like the corporate environments their guests typically inhabited. Yet for the first time in years, she felt no shame in her surroundings. Their home might be humble, but it had produced extraordinary children. The knock came precisely at 7 p.m. Lucia opened the door to reveal Jessica Chen and, surprisingly, Elon Musk himself. Protocol suggested that the busy CEO would send representatives to this milestone meeting, not attend personally. "Welcome," Sarah greeted, stepping forward. "Thank you for coming." "Smells amazing in here," Jessica commented, handing Sarah a bouquet of vibrant tropical flowers. Always thoughtful, Jessica had become more than a corporate liaison over the past months, something closer to a friend. Musk nodded his agreement, offering a surprisingly modest bottle of wine. "I brought this from my small vineyard project." "Still, experimental wine from Elon Musk," Lucia whispered to Miguel. "Our lives are officially bizarre." Dinner began with a slight awkwardness of worlds colliding, corporate titans at a chipped formica table, drinking experimental wine from mismatched glasses. Yet, as the food was passed and compliments exchanged, the atmosphere warmed. Sarah's picadillo received enthusiastic praise, especially from Musk, who asked detailed questions about the preparation method with the same intensity he applied to engineering problems. "The secret is toasting the cumin seeds first," Sarah explained, unused to discussing cooking techniques with a billionaire. "My grandmother insisted it changes the flavor profile completely. Controlled thermal application altering molecular structure." Musk nodded. "It makes perfect sense." Miguel grinned at the typical Musk translation of a cooking tip into scientific terminology. Over the past months, he'd grown accustomed to the CEO's unique communication style during their bi-weekly virtual meetings. As they finished the main course, Jessica placed a sleek portfolio on the table. "So we're here to officially mark the 3-month milestone of our collaboration," she began, "and I'm pleased to report that Miguel's atmospheric recycling system has moved from theoretical design to physical prototype." She opened the portfolio to reveal photographs of a complex apparatus being assembled in a SpaceX lab. "This is currently being constructed according to Miguel's specifications, with some scaling adjustments from the engineering team." Miguel leaned forward, eyes wide with wonder at seeing his designs manifested in reality. That's really it," he whispered. "They actually built it." "Not just built it," Musk interjected. "Preliminary tests are showing 26% efficiency improvements over current systems, better than our projections." He turned to Miguel with unexpected intensity. "This could become standard equipment on all future Mars missions." Sarah felt her throat tighten with pride and disbelief. Her son, her 12-year-old boy, who had once built forts from sofa cushions in this very room, was helping design technology that might someday sustain human life on another planet. "There's more," Jessica continued, extracting a document. "The patent application has been filed with Miguel, listed ASCO inventor, alongside the SpaceX engineering team. Once approved, this triggers the first royalty arrangements we discussed." "Royalties?" Sarah echoed. "Miguel's contributions have moved beyond the theoretical," Musk explained. "The initial agreement covered High's educational support and stipend. This," he tapped the document, "represents his first actual commercial innovation. The terms we negotiated provide him with a percentage of any licensing or implementation value." Jessica smiled. "In simpler terms, Miguel has just earned his first official inventor's compensation. The initial payment is being transferred to the trust account we established." She handed Sarah another document. The figure at the bottom, $75,000, caused her coffee cup to freeze halfway to her lips. $75,000, Sarah whispered. "The standard rate for a Level 1 innovation with immediate implementation potential," Musk confirmed matter-of-factly. "If the system performs as expected in extended testing, there will be performance bonuses as well." Miguel stared at the document, then at Musk, then at his mother. "Does this mean—" "It means," Lucia interjected, "that you're officially a paid inventor genius." The moment hung between them. The culmination of months of late nights, of Miguel's tireless work, of Sarah's leap of faith in signing the agreements, of Jessica's initial decision to see potential where others saw only need. As Sarah struggled to find words, Musk cleared his throat. "There's another matter I'd like to discuss, something more personal." His typically certain tone held an unusual hesitation. "It concerns why I'm actually here tonight, rather than just sending the team with the paperwork." The shift in his demeanor drew everyone's attention. Musk rarely displayed uncertainty. "What is it?" Sarah asked. Musk set his glass down carefully. "When we met at the coffee shop, you mentioned that you once dreamed of being an architect." Sarah nodded, surprised he had remembered this detail from their conversation. "That triggered something in my memory," Musk continued. "I asked my team to look into something, a hunch, really." He turned to Jessica, who produced a weathered file folder from her bag. "This took some finding," Jessica said, placing the folder gently before Sarah. "It was in archived records from 2007. Sarah opened the folder with curious fingers. Inside was a faded blueprint, architectural drawings of a sustainable housing concept. Her breath caught as she recognized her own work from 15 years earlier. "Where did you get this?" she whispered. "Solar City," Musk replied. "Before Tesla acquired it. They ran a sustainable housing design competition for college students. You were one of the finalists." Sarah's fingers traced the lines of the drawing, the solar collection systems integrated into aesthetic rooflines, the natural ventilation channels, the community garden spaces. "I had forgotten," she murmured. "It was my final year project. My professor encouraged me to submit it." "You won honorable mention," Jessica said softly. "But according to the records, the notification was returned a undeliverable. You had already moved." "Carlos and I relocated when I got pregnant with Lucia," Sarah confirmed. "I never finished my degree. Life happened." "Your design was remarkably prescient," Musk observed. "Many of the concepts you incorporated are only now becoming industry standards." He leaned forward. "But here's the truly extraordinary part, your solar roof integration approach. It's remarkably similar to what Miguel designed for his Mars habitat atmospheric collection system." Sarah looked up sharply. "What?" Musk nodded, genuine wonder in his expression. "The angled collection surfaces, the distribution pathways, the fundamental architecture is nearly identical, just applied to different resources. Sunlight in your case, atmospheric carbon dioxide in Miguel's. But that's impossible," Sarah protested. "Miguel never saw these designs. I stopped sketching buildings years ago." "Yet somehow," Musk countered, "your son independently developed a solution that mirrors your own approach from before he was born. The mathematical probability of such parallel development is—" He paused, calculating, "astronomically small." Miguel stared at his mother's blueprints, then at his own designs on Jessica's tablet. The similarities were undeniable once highlighted. The same elegant efficiency, the same integration of function with form. "Mom," he breathed, "we think alike, like literally think the same way." Lucia leaned over to examine both designs. "The resemblance is uncanny," she agreed. "It's like some kind of inherited intuition." Sarah felt tears threatening. For years, she had buried her creative dreams beneath the pragmatic demands of single motherhood. Her architectural visions had been set aside so thoroughly she had almost forgotten they existed. Yet somehow, her design approach, her way of seeing problems and crafting solutions, had flowered in her son, unseen but undeniably present. "There's a theory," Musk said quietly, "that certain ways of thinking, certain approaches to problem-solving, may have genetic components. Not specific knowledge, but frameworks for processing information and visualizing solutions." Hege gestured between Sarah's blueprints and Miguel's designs. "This seems like compelling evidence." "But what does this mean?" Sarah asked, still processing. "The revelation. It means," Jessica interjected gently, "that Miguel's talent didn't come from nowhere. It was always there, in your family's DNA. In you." Musk nodded. "I don't typically dabble in sentimentality, but this connection seems significant. You set aside your architectural career to raise your children, but your creative approach found expression through Miguel nonetheless." The revelation settled over the table like a missing puzzle piece, finally clicking into place. Miguel had not developed his gift in isolation. He had inherited a way of seeing that had once driven his mother's dreams. "There's one more thing," Musk added, producing another document. "I'd like to offer you a position, Sarah." "Me?" Sarah's surprise was evident. "Doing what?" "Consulting on habitability factors for our Mars structure designs," he replied. "Your architectural background combined with your practical experience in maximizing limited living spaces makes you uniquely qualified to advise on human-centered aspects of habitat design." Sarah stared at him, speechless. "It would be part-time." "Initially," Jessica clarified, "with flexibility to work remotely and maintain your current job if you wish. But it would allow you to contribute directly to the same projects Miguel is working on." "I don't have a degree," Sarah protested weakly. "I never finished." "I don't care about degrees," Musk interrupted. "I care about results. Your early designs demonstrate an intuitive understanding of sustainable living spaces that formal education often fails to instill." He gestured to her blueprint. "This is the credential that matters." Sarah looked around the table, at Jessica's encouraging smile, at Lucia's wide-eyed excitement, at Miguel's expression of pure joy, and at Elon Musk's matter-of-fact confidence in offering a former cleaning woman a position consulting on interplanetary habitation. "The Mars colonists will need more than engineering," Musk continued pragmatically. "They'll need spaces that support psychological well-being during long-duration missions. Your designs showed remarkable insight into how physical environments affect human experience." In that moment, Sarah felt something long dormant awakening within her, the passionate, creative part of herself she'd sacrificed to survival. The architectural student who had once dreamed of building spaces that would uplift and inspire hadn't disappeared after all. She had been waiting quietly for the opportunity to emerge once more. "I would need to learn so much," she said softly. "The technical requirements, the constraints of the Martian environment." "Mom," Miguel said, reaching for her hand, "we could learn together. We could be a team." The simple statement broke the final barrier within Sarah's heart. The tears she had been holding back spilled-over ass. She squeezed her son's hand. This remarkable child, who had somehow reopened doors she had thought permanently closed. "I would be honored," she said finally, looking up at Musk with newfound determination. "When do I start?" The conference room at SpaceX Miami hummed with tension. What had begun as a routine project review had escalated into something far more contentious, with raised voices and clashing perspectives. At the center of the storm stood Miguel Martinez, now 13 and growing more confident by the day, defending his latest design modification against skepticism from senior engineers. "The thermal exchange system won't handle the temperature variations," insisted Roger Dalton, the gray-haired lead engineer whose 30 years of aerospace experience made him both respected and occasionally rigid. "You're asking components to perform beyond established tolerance limits. Only if we use standard materials," Miguel countered, his voice cracking slightly with adolescent changes and passionate conviction. "The carbon-ceramic composite I've proposed has different properties." Sarah watched from her seat at the table, her heart swelling with pride even as anxiety knotted her stomach. 6 months into her role as habitability consultant, she had grown accustomed to the technical discussions that dominated these meetings, though much of the advanced engineering still exceeded her grasp. What she understood perfectly, however, was the dynamics playing out before her. The established authority figure challenging the young upstart whose ideas threatened conventional wisdom. Elon Musk observed the exchange silently from the head of the table, his expression inscrutable as he followed each technical argument. Jessica Chen caught Sarah's eye across the room and gave a small, reassuring nod. They had both witnessed similar confrontations before. Musk's corporate culture explicitly encouraged challenging ideas, regardless of their source. "The composite is theoretical," Dalton pressed, frustration evident in his tone. "We'd need to develop new manufacturing processes, new testing protocols. It would set the project timeline back by months. But it would increase efficiency by 23%, Miguel insisted, and reduce mass by almost a third. That translates to significant launch cost savings, at the expense of proven reliability," Dalton countered. "Mars is unforgiving. Theoretical improvements mean nothing if the system fails when actual human lives depend on it." The words hung heavy in the air. For all the intellectual excitement of innovation, the stark reality remained. These were not academic exercises, but technologies intended to keep people alive in the harshest environment humans had ever attempted to inhabit. Musk finally broke his silence. "Both perspectives have merit. Roger's experience with system reliability is essential, as is Miguel's innovative approach to materials." He turned to the young inventor. "Could your design incorporate a redundant system using conventional materials? As a fail-safe?" Miguel considered this, brow furrowed in concentration. "It would add back some of the mass, but yes, a hybrid approach could work." His fingers flew across his tablet, making real-time adjustments to the schematic displayed on the wall screen. "Something like this." Dalton studied the modified design, his professional skepticism warring with reluctant admiration for the boy's quick adaptation. "It could work," he admitted grudgingly. "We'd still need extensive testing." "Naturally," Musk agreed. "Schedule it immediately. I want physical prototypes of both systems for comparison testing by next month." He stood, signaling the meeting's conclusion. "Roger, Miguel, work together on the integration points. I expect a unified proposal, not competing visions." As the room cleared, Sarah approached Miguel, who was still making notes on his tablet. "That was impressive, mijo," she said softly. "Standing your ground while still finding compromise." Miguel looked up, his expression troubled despite the apparent resolution. "He thinks I'm just a kid with unrealistic ideas." "He thinks you're challenging years of established practice," Sarah corrected gently. "That's threatening, even to brilliant engineers." She squeezed his shoulder. "But did you notice he didn't dismiss your design outright? That's progress." Before Miguel could respond, a notification chimed on both their phones simultaneously, the specialized alert tone they'd set for messages from Lucia. Sarah opened it to find a single line of text. "Got in! MIT early admission!" "Mom!" Miguel exclaimed, seeing the same message. "Lucia did it!" Their shared celebration was interrupted by Jessica approaching with an uncharacteristically concerned expression. "Sarah, Miguel, can I speak with you privately?" She led them to a small meeting room and closed the door. "I thought you should know. There's been a communication from Carlos Martinez." Sarah felt as if the floor had suddenly tilted beneath her. "Carlos, my ex-husband," Jessica nodded grimly. "He's reached out through legal channels, requesting information about Miguel's involvement with SpaceX and the financial arrangements." "How did he even know?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "The Miami Herald piece last month." Jessica explained. The profile about the Martinez family partnership with SpaceX was picked up by several national outlets. Sarah closed her eyes briefly, remembering the glowing article that had celebrated their journey, from Miguel's letter to their current roles. At the time, the publicity had seemed a validation of their new path. Now it loomed as a threat. "What exactly does he want?" she asked, forcing herself to confront the situation directly. On the surface, he's expressing concern about Miguel's workload and educational development, Jessica replied carefully. But his attorney has made specific inquiries about the trust account and royalty arrangements. Miguel's expression darkened. "He wants my money. He hasn't contacted us in over a year, and now that I'm earning something, he suddenly cares." "We don't know that for certain," Jessica cautioned, though her tone suggested she shared the assessment. "I do," Miguel insisted. "He left when things got hard. He stopped sending support when Mom needed it most. Now he thinks he can just come back because there's something in it for him." Sarah placed a steadying hand on her son's arm, feeling the trembling anger beneath his skin. "What are our options?" she asked Jessica. "Our legal team is reviewing the situation," Jessica assured her. "Carlos has certain parental rights under Florida law, but this history of minimal involvement and inconsistent support works in your favor. Still, these situations can become complicated." The understated warning was clear. A legal battle with her ex-husband could become a disruptive, painful process, potentially affecting Miguel's work and their newly stable life. "Does Mr. Musk know about this?" Sarah asked. "Not yet," Jessica replied. "I wanted to speak with you first. This is a personal matter, and I respect your privacy, but if you're comfortable, I believe having his support could be valuable." Sarah nodded slowly. "Tell him. Carlos needs to understand who he's up against if he tries to interfere with Miguel's future." As they left the meeting room, they encountered Roger Dalton waiting in the hallway, his expression unusually hesitant. "Miguel," he began awkwardly, "I wanted to say, your composite material approach? It's unorthodox, but it has potential." The admission seemed to cost the older engineer considerable effort. "I've scheduled lab time tomorrow to run initial simulations, if you'd like to participate." Miguel blinked in surprise at this unexpected olive branch. Yes, I'd like that. Thank you." Dalton nodded stiffly. 1800 hours. "Don't be late." He turned to leave, then paused. "And bring your notebooks on the molecular bonding calculations. They were thorough." As Dalton departed, Miguel turned to his mother with a mixture of confusion and cautious optimism. "Did that just happen? Did he actually invite me to his lab?" "He did," Sarah confirmed, momentarily setting aside her concerns about Carlos to appreciate this professional breakthrough. "That's a significant gesture from someone like Dalton." "I should prepare," Miguel said, his scientific enthusiasm temporarily overshadowing the troubling news about his father. "There are several simulation parameters I want to adjust before—" "Miguel," Sarah interrupted gently, "we need to talk about your father first." Her son's expression immediately hardened. There's nothing to talk about. He abandoned us. He doesn't get to come back just because I'm doing something important now. It's more complicated than that, Sarah sighed. Legally, he's still your father. Biology doesn't make someone a father, Miguel retorted with a bitterness that pained Sarah to hear from one Soyoung. Being there does, like Mr. Guzman next door who taught me to fix the sink when it leaked, or Mr. Dalton who criticizes my work but still takes it seriously, or even Mr. Musk who sees value in what I can do. His voice cracked slightly. Carlos, Martinez is just DNA. Before Sarah could respond, her phone rang. Lucia calling with her MIT news. Sarah answered, putting it on speaker so Miguel could join the conversation. Lucia's excited voice filled the corridor as she detailed every aspect of her acceptance letter, the scholarship package, and her plans for the fall semester. Mom, they specifically mentioned the Martinez Family Innovation Partnership with SpaceX in my admission letter, and guess what? 3 other students from my community college got early transfer acceptance too. They said our success inspired a whole new pathway program. As Lucia continued sharing her excitement, Sarah exchanged a meaningful glance with Miguel. Their families' transformation was creating ripples that extended beyond their own lives, opening doors for others in their community. Whatever challenges Carlos might bring, they would face them together, strengthened by what they had built in his absence. Later, that evening, in Musk's private office, Sarah sat across from the billionaire as he reviewed the information Jessica had provided about Carlos's inquiries. "This is unfortunate timing," Musk observed, his tone pragmatic rather than sympathetic. "Miguel is at a critical development stage, both personally and professionally. Disruption now could impede his progress significantly. I won't let Carlos interfere with Miguel's opportunities," Sarah stated firmly, "whatever it takes." Musk studied her with analytical intensity. "Our legal resources are at your disposal, of course, but I've found that legal battles, while sometimes necessary, rarely yield optimal outcomes for any party. They consume time, energy, and emotional capital better invested elsewhere." "What alternative is there?" Sarah asked. "Carlos has already engaged an attorney." "Perhaps a direct approach," Musk suggested. "People respond to incentives. Your ex-husband's sudden interest coincides with Miguel's financial success. That's unlikely to be coincidental," Sarah bristled. "Are you suggesting I should pay him off?" "I'm suggesting we identify his actual objectives and address them efficiently." Musk's expression remained impassive. "If financial gain is his primary motivation, a structured settlement might resolve the situation with minimal disruption to Miguel's development." "It feels wrong," Sarah said softly, "like rewarding him for years of neglect." "Consider it an investment in Miguel's uninterrupted progress," Musk countered. "Sometimes the pragmatic solution, while emotionally unsatisfying, yields the best long-term results." Sarah recognized the characteristic Musk approach, dispassionate problem-solving divorced from conventional emotional responses. Yet beneath his analytical exterior, she sensed genuine concern for Miguel's well-being. "I need to discuss this with both my children," she said finally. "Carlos is part of their history, even if he hasn't been part of their recent lives. Any decision affects them all." Musk nodded, respect evident in his expression. "Family comes first, as you specified in our original agreement. Whatever you decide, we'll support your choice." As Sarah drove home that evening, her mind swirled with competing thoughts. Pride in Lucia's MIT acceptance, concern about Carlos's sudden reappearance, hope for Miguel's growing professional recognition, and lingering anxiety about her own ability to navigate these complex waters. The Miami skyline glittered against the night sky, beautiful and distant, like the future they were building, brilliant with possibility, yet fraught with unseen challenges. The path forward would require all the resilience and creativity that had sustained her family through years of hardship. Whatever came next, Sarah knew one thing with absolute certainty: The Martinez family had been fundamentally transformed, not by Elon Musk's resources or opportunities, but by their own courage to embrace potential when it appeared. Carlos might threaten their newfound stability, but he could never take away what they had discovered within themselves, the capacity to imagine and build a future beyond the limitations of their past. The Wynwood Community Center buzzed with activity as residents from throughout Miami's diverse neighborhoods gathered for the special event. Colorful banners, emblazoned with Future Builders Initiative, hung from the rafters, and rows of science fair-style displays lined the main hall. At the center stood an elaborate model of a Mars habitat, surrounded by interactive screens showing its internal systems. Miguel Martinez, now approaching 14, moved confidently among the visitors, explaining complex engineering concepts with the clarity and patience that had become his hallmark. In the 8 months since Carlos had reappeared in their lives, Miguel had grown 3 inches and developed a quiet self-assurance that went beyond his technical brilliance. The water reclamation system operates at 97% efficiency, he explained to a group of wide-eyed middle schoolers. That means Martian colonists can reuse almost all their water indefinitely. Won't it taste gross? A girl with bright beads in her braids asked skeptically. Miguel grinned. That's exactly the question my mom asked when we were designing it. She said engineering isn't just about making things work, it's about making things work for people. He pointed to a small component in the model, so we added this extra filtration stage that isn't technically necessary for purification, but improves taste and clarity. Habitability factors are just as important as technical efficiency. Sarah watched from across the room, her heart swelling with pride. The integration of human-centered design considerations had become her specific contribution to the Mars Habitat project, bringing her architectural background full circle in ways she could never have imagined. In her new role at SpaceX, she had found herself advocating for the subtle but crucial elements that transformed a survivable space into a livable one. "Your son has quite the following," remarked Dr. Elena Rodriguez, superintendent of Miami-Dade County Schools. "Those students have been hanging on his every word for almost 30 minutes. "He's found his purpose," Sarah replied. "It makes all the difference." "And so have you, from what I hear," Dr. Rodriguez observed. "The partnership program you've developed between SpaceX and our schools has been transformative. We've seen a 40% increase in science fair participation this year alone." Sarah nodded toward a nearby display where students from her old neighborhood were demonstrating a solar desalination system. They just needed to see that innovation isn't limited to certain zip codes or income brackets. The Future Builders Initiative had been Sarah's brainchild, a program that identified promising students from underserved communities and connected them with mentors, resources, and real-world projects. What had begun as a personal mission to create opportunities like those Miguel had received had evolved into a comprehensive educational partnership, with SpaceX providing funding and technical support while local schools implemented the curriculum. "Ms. Martinez?" A tentative voice interrupted their conversation. Sarah turned to find a young Latina woman in her early 20s, clutching a portfolio. "I'm Carmen Diaz," the woman continued. "I'm one of the architectural interns in your mentorship program. I just wanted to thank you personally for the opportunity. Working on the habitat designs has changed everything for me." Sarah smiled warmly. "Your work on the communal spaces concept was exceptional, Carmen. Have you met Dr. Rodriguez? She's been a crucial supporter of our educational initiatives." As the women conversed, Sarah's attention was drawn to the entrance, where Jessica Chen had just arrived with an unexpected guest, Roger Dalton, the senior engineer who had once been Miguel's most vocal critic. Over the past months, their initial antagonism had evolved into a grudging respect and finally into a genuine mentorship. Now the older engineer sought out Miguel at community events, his gruff exterior softening whenever his young protégé made a technical breakthrough. On the far side of the hall, Lucia was holding court at the MIT early admission booth, her confidence radiant as she spoke with high school students and parents about college pathways. At 19, she'd completed her first semester at the prestigious university with distinction, her engineering studies complemented by a self-designed focus, one educational access. The Martinez siblings had become a powerful duo, Miguel innovating technologies, while Lucia built systems to ensure those innovations reached diverse communities. "Quite the family empire you're building," came a familiar South African accented voice beside her. Sarah turned to find Elon Musk surveying the scene, dressed in his characteristic black t-shirt and jeans, despite the formal nature of the event. His attendance had been uncertain until the last minute, his schedule perpetually dominated by competing global priorities. "I wasn't sure you'd make it," Sarah remarked. "The board is considering expanding the Future Builders Initiative to all our operational locations," Musk replied. "You needed to see it functioning firsthand. And your assessment?" she asked. A rare, genuine smile crossed his features. "Exceeding expectations. The technical aptitude among these students is remarkable, given the minimal resources most of their schools possess." "It's not about resources," Sarah countered. "It's about belief. These kids have always had the talent. What they lacked was someone seeing their potential and providing a path forward." Musk nodded thoughtfully. "Like Jessica did with Miguel." "Exactly." Sarah's gaze drifted to where her son was now deep in technical discussion with Dalton, the two of them hunched over a tablet, oblivious to the bustling event around them. One person can change everything by simply opening a door. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of the mayor, flanked by photographers and staff. The publicity machine had arrived right on schedule. Sarah excused herself, knowing that Musk would handle the political aspects of the event while she returned to the educational substance that truly mattered to her. As she made her way through the crowd, Sarah found herself reflecting on the extraordinary journey of the past year. The confrontation with Carlos had ultimately resolved more smoothly than anyone anticipated. Faced with the united front of the Martinez family, backed by SpaceX's legal resources and, most critically, Miguel's own unwavering refusal to allow his father's return to disrupt his work, Carlos had accepted a structured settlement that provided financial compensation while requiring his complete non-interference in Miguel's career and education. The solution had been precisely as Musk predicted, pragmatic rather than emotionally satisfying, but effective in removing the threat while allowing the family to refocus on their future rather than their past. Within weeks, Carlos had relocated to Chicago with his new family, the money securing his absence more reliably than his presence had ever been secured by family ties. "Ms. Martinez?" A staff member touched her elbow. "We're ready for the main presentation." "Whenever you are." Sarah nodded, moving toward the small stage at the front of the hall. As the community center staff made adjustments to the microphone, Sarah surveyed the gathered crowd: educators, students, community members, corporate representatives, and political figures, all brought together by this unprecedented initiative. The sight of Miguel and Lucia standing side by side near the front, her children, once limited by circumstance, now expanding into their full potential, filled her with a quiet joy that transcended the public triumph of the event. Whatever came next, this transformation was already complete and irreversible. They had discovered their own capabilities, and no future challenge could take that knowledge from them. "Good afternoon," Sarah began, her voice steady and assured. Another transformation few would notice, but that represented perhaps the most significant personal change. The woman who had once apologized to building managers about late rent now addressed mayors and executives with the quiet confidence of someone who knew her worth. A year ago, my son wrote a letter to Elon Musk as part of a school project, never truly expecting a response. That letter, and more importantly, the unexpected reply it eventually received, changed the trajectory of our family's life. But what we've discovered through this journey is that such transformations shouldn't be exceptional. They should be accessible to every child with the capacity to dream and the determination to bring those dreams into reality. As Sarah outlined the Future Builders Initiative's accomplishments and vision, she noticed a small commotion at the back of the hall. A group of children from the Little Havana Community Center had arrived late, led by Mrs. Patel, their elderly volunteer coordinator who had once been the Martinez family's supportive neighbor. The sight of her former neighbor brought a wave of memories. The shared meals during their hardest times, the encouragement when hope seemed foolish, the unwavering belief that better days would come. In many ways, Mrs. Patel had been their first bridge to possibility, offering kindness when rejection would have been easier. The most powerful resource we can offer young innovators isn't money or even technology, Sarah continued, her gaze meeting Mrs. Patel's across the crowded room. It's belief, authentic, unwavering belief in their potential. When one person truly sees another's capabilities and acts on that vision, lives change, communities change, the future changes. From her position on stage, Sarah could see the transformation spreading before her like ripples in water. Miguel animatedly explaining a concept to a wide-eyed younger boy who reminded Sarah of her son just a year ago. Lucia guiding a group of teenage girls through college application strategies. Jessica Chen, deep in conversation with a community college administrator about expanding their partnership. Musk himself, listening intently to a 10-year-old girl explaining her solar energy project with surprising sophistication. Each connection represented a bridge being built between privilege and need, between opportunity and talent, between present limitations and future possibilities. The Martinez family's experience was no longer exceptional but expansive, extending outward to touch hundreds of lives across Miami. Today marks not an endpoint, but a beginning, Sarah concluded. The real measure of our success won't be seen today or tomorrow, but in the innovations, discoveries, and solutions that will emerge in the coming years from minds that might otherwise have been overlooked. The future of our community, and perhaps of humanity's reach toward the stars, depends on our commitment to seeing potential wherever it exists, not merely where it is convenient to look. As applause filled the community center, Sarah stepped back from the microphone, her gaze finding her children in the crowd. Miguel gave her a thumbs up, while Lucia's smile radiated pride. They had come so far from that kitchen table, where Miguel had first sealed his letter to Elon Musk, uncertain if anyone would ever read his words. The transformation had begun not with Musk's resources or SpaceX's opportunities, but with Jessica Chen's simple choice to truly see what others had missed. The extraordinary potential waiting to be recognized in an ordinary family facing ordinary struggles. That recognition had sparked a chain reaction that continued to expand, touching more lives with each passing day. And in that expanding circle of possibility, Sarah Martinez had discovered something unexpected. Not just a new career or financial stability, but a purpose that wove together her architectural dreams, her parental dedication, and her hard-earned understanding of overcoming barriers. The woman who had once defined success as simply keeping the lights on now helped illuminate paths forward for an entire community, building bridges sturdy enough to carry the next generation toward a future limited only by imagination. 18 months later, the Miami skyline glittered in the early evening light as a sleek autonomous vehicle pulled up to the newly constructed Innovation Center. The building itself told a story of transformation, a former warehouse in a once neglected industrial district, now reimagined as a gleaming hub of technology and education. Its distinctive curved roof housed the largest solar array in southern Florida, while its walls of smart glass adjusted transparency based on optimal lighting conditions. Sarah Martinez stepped from the vehicle, pausing to appreciate the structure she had helped design. At 40, she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had found her place in the world. Her once premature grey was now elegantly styled, and her simple business attire reflected her position as Director of Community Innovation Programs at SpaceX's expanded Miami operations. "It still doesn't seem real sometimes," she murmured to Jessica Chen, who emerged from the passenger side. Jessica smiled, her own position having evolved from Musk's assistant to Chief of Educational Partnerships across all SpaceX divisions. From blueprint to reality in 14 months. Even by Elon's standards, that's impressive. "I wasn't talking about the building," Sarah replied softly. Jessica's expression warmed with understanding. Their friendship had deepened through shared challenges and triumphs, professional respect evolving into genuine personal connection. "I know. Sometimes I look at the programmetrics and can hardly believe where we started." The Innovation Center represented far more than architectural achievement. It stood as the physical manifestation of the Future Builders initiative that had grown from Sarah's initial concept into a nationally recognized educational model. What had begun with 20 students from underserved Miami neighborhoods now encompassed over 5,000 participants across 12 cities, with expansion plans for international implementation already underway. Inside the center's atrium, preparations for the evening ceremony were nearly complete. Display screens showcased projects from across the country, solar desalination systems designed by Navajo students in Arizona, urban vertical farming solutions from Detroit, advanced recycling technologies from Appalachia. Each innovation addressed specific community needs while contributing to broader technological advancement. "Mom," Miguel's voice rang out as he spotted Sarah entering. At 15, he had shot up to 6 feet tall, his lanky frame and thoughtful. Eyes reminiscent of his father's physical presence, but reflecting his mother's determined spirit. Now officially SpaceX's youngest project lead, he divided his time between advanced engineering work and MIT's special admission program, where he took courses remotely while maintaining ties to his Miami community. "The Johnson team just arrived," he reported, tablet in hand as always. "Their atmospheric filtration system passed final testing this morning, 96.8% efficiency using locally sourced materials, just as they predicted." Sarah felt a surge of pride, not just in her son's accomplishments, but in how he had grown into his role as mentor to younger innovators. The Miguel, who had once been an isolated, brilliant child, had become a confident young man who found joy in helping others develop their talent. "Perfect timing," Sarah replied. "Where's your sister?" "The Secretary of Education will be arriving any minute. Video call with her Cambridge team." Miguel gestured toward a quiet corner where Lucia was engaged in animated conversation via holographic display. At 21, Lucia had become a force in her own right at MIT, establishing a student-led initiative that connected university resources with community innovation hubs like the one they'd built in Miami. As Sarah surveyed the bustling atrium, familiar faces caught her attention. Mrs. Patel, now coordinator of senior mentorship programs, guiding a group of retirees with valuable engineering experience. Roger Dalton, who had postponed his retirement to lead technical advisory services for the initiative. Community leaders from Little Havana and Liberty City, who had initially viewed the program with skepticism, but now served as its most vocal advocates. "Quite the revolution you've sparked," came the unmistakable voice of Elon Musk, who had approached unnoticed during her observations. "Revolution implies disruption," Sarah countered with the comfortable directness that characterized their relationship now. This is evolution, natural development of potential that was always there. Musk's slight smile acknowledged the correction. Fair point, though the pace has been decidedly revolutionary. The MITI partnership alone has created educational pathways that simply didn't exist 2 years ago. That's all, Lucia, Sarah said proudly. She recognized that traditional university admission processes were filtering out exactly the kind of unconventional thinking that drives innovation. Around them, the center continued filling with guests, corporate partners, government officials, educators, and most importantly, families of program participants. Many came from backgrounds similar to the Martinez family's earlier circumstances, hard-working, parents with brilliant children whose potential might have remained untapped without the pathways the initiative had created. "The secretary has arrived," Jessica reported, returning from a brief call, "and CNN wants a short statement before the formal program begins." Sarah nodded, mentally shifting into the public-facing role that had once felt so foreign but now came naturally. As she moved toward the entrance to greet the education secretary, she passed the center's heritage wall, a digital display chronicling the program's origins. At its center was an image of Miguel's original letter to Musk, preserved as the catalyst that had sparked the entire movement. The evening ceremony unfolded with the practiced efficiency that characterized all SpaceX events. After brief remarks from government officials and corporate partners, attention turned to the program's results, not just technological innovations, but transformed lives and communities. A montage of statistics and testimonials filled the massive screens. High school graduation rates up 22% in participating districts. College admission increased by 35% among program participants. 17 patents filed by student innovators in the past year alone. Community implementation of student-designed solutions addressing local environmental challenges across the country. When it came time for Sarah's address, she approached the podium with the same quiet determination that had carried her family through years of struggle before their lives changed. 2 years ago, my son wrote a letter that never should have received. "A response," she began, her voice steady and clear. "By conventional metrics, we were just one struggling family among millions. Unremarkable, except in the dreams we dared to maintain despite our circumstances." She paused, her gaze finding Miguel and Lucia in the front row. What happened next wasn't magic or miracle, it was recognition. One person choosing to truly see potential where others saw only need. Jessica Chen looked beyond rejection to possibility, and in doing so, she changed not just our family's trajectory, but ultimately thousands of others. Jessica ducked her head slightly at the acknowledgement, still uncomfortable with public recognition. Despite her central role in the initiative's success, what we've built together over these past 2 years isn't charity or corporate social responsibility, Sarah continued. It's a recalibration of how we identify and develop human potential. The innovations emerging from our programs aren't just clever ideas. They're essential solutions to challenges we all face, created by minds that might never have found expression in traditional systems. Behind her, the screens displayed images from innovation centers, now operating across the country. Converted warehouses in Detroit, repurposed shopping malls in rural Kentucky, renovated school buildings in South Los Angeles. Each hub served as both educational facility and community resource, places where technological advancement and local needs intersected. Tonight, we're announcing the next phase of the Future Builders Initiative, Sarah revealed. In partnership with MIT, Stanford, and the Department of Education, we're establishing a new educational pathway that recognizes and nurtures innovative thinking from elementary school through advanced research positions. The Unconventional Thinkers Network will connect mentors, resources, and opportunities across traditional boundaries of age, geography, and academic credentials. Murmurs of excitement rippled through the audience as details appeared on the screens. A comprehensive reimagining of how talent could be identified and developed outside conventional educational structures. At the heart of this network is a simple premise. Brilliance exists everywhere, but opportunity does not. Our mission is to bridge that gap, not through temporary programs or limited scholarships, but through sustainable systems that permanently connect talent with the resources needed to flourish. As Sarah concluded her remarks, her gaze found Musk in the audience. The billionaire innovator who had once dismissed Miguel's application gave a small nod of acknowledgement, not just of the program's success, but of the fundamental shift in perspective it represented. What had begun as a modest scholarship initiative had evolved into something far more significant, a systemic approach to cultivating the human ingenuity needed to address humanity's greatest challenges. The formal ceremony transitioned to a showcase of student innovations, with participants demonstrating their projects to attendees. Sarah found herself drawn to a quiet corner where a familiar scene was unfolding. Miguel, sitting cross-legged on the floor with a group of wide-eyed children, explaining complex engineering concepts with the patient enthusiasm that had become his hallmark. The recycling system works just like your body reuses water, he was explaining to a girl of perhaps 7 or 8. Nothing is really waste if you know how to transform it into something valuable again. The child's face lit with understanding. Like how my mum turns old clothes into new ones, she offered. Exactly, Miguel affirmed. You're already thinking like an engineer. Sarah watched the interaction, struck by its simple power, the spark of recognition passing from one mind to another, the moment when possibility took root. This was the true transformation they had achieved, replicated now thousands of times across communities that had once been overlooked by institutions of innovation and advancement. As the evening continued, Sarah found herself standing beside Jessica near the heritage wall, both women momentarily quiet amid the celebration surrounding them. "Did you ever imagine this?" Sarah asked softly, gesturing to the bustling innovation center, the distinguished guests, the children excitedly explaining their inventions to government officials and corporate leaders. Jessica shook her head. "I just thought Miguel's design was too brilliant to ignore. I never expected." She gestured to encompass the scene before them. "You changed everything," Sarah said simply, "for us and now for so many others." Jessica's expression turned thoughtful. "I only opened one door. You built an entire network of them," she smiled, "and left them all propped open behind you." Around them, the ripples of their initial connection continued expanding outward, bridges being built between worlds that had once seemed impossibly distant, pathways appearing where barriers had stood, potential blossoming into tangible reality. What had begun with rejection had transformed into a movement that transcended any single family's story to become something far greater, a fundamental reimagining of how human potential could be recognized and developed. The Innovation Center itself stood as physical testimony to this wider impact, not just a building, but a beacon, illuminating possibilities that extended far beyond its walls into communities across the nation and increasingly around the world. 5 years after Miguel's letter first reached SpaceX, the Martinez family gathered on the observation deck of Kennedy Space Center. The Florida morning sun cast long shadows across the launch complex as final preparations continued for the historic mission. Sarah, now 45, stood between her children, her hand resting lightly on Miguel's shoulder as technicians performed last-minute checks on the gleaming Mars habitat module that dominated the payload section of the massive rocket. "That's yours up there," she said softly to her son. "Your design, your vision." Miguel, now 20 and a full-fledged aerospace engineer despite his youth, nodded silently. His atmospheric processing system evolved from those first crude sketches. He'd included with his letter had become a cornerstone of the marsh habitat technology. The innovation that had once seemed like a child's ambitious dream now represented humanity's best hope for sustainable life on another planet. "Not just mine," he corrected, his voice deep with emotion. "Ours. Your habitability designs are what make it more than just a survival chamber." Lucia, 25, squeezed her brother's arm supportively. With her MIT doctorate nearly complete and her position as Director of Educational Integration at the Unconventional Thinkers Network secured, she had become a powerful advocate for reimagining how innovation was taught and nurtured. "The Martinez family legacy," she teased gently. "Not bad for a family that once worried about making rent." The observation deck was crowded with VIPs, government officials, corporate leaders, media personalities, all gathered for the historic launch. Yet in a mark of how thoroughly the landscape had changed, many of the honored positions were occupied by graduates of the Future Builders Initiative, young innovators from formerly marginalized communities whose brilliance had found expression through the pathways the Martinez family had helped create. Jessica Chen approached, her crisp efficiency now tempered by genuine warmth after years of friendship. As Global Director of Innovation Networks at SpaceX, she had transformed her initial act of kindness toward Miguel into a comprehensive system for identifying and nurturing unconventional talent worldwide. "They're ready for the final briefing," she informed them. "Elon wants the entire design team present." As they followed Jessica through security checkpoints toward the Mission Control Building, Sarah reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them to this moment. Their old apartment complex had been repurposed as the first Martinez Innovation Center, a hub for community-based engineering education that had become a model replicated in over 50 locations globally. The cramped kitchen table where Miguel had once labored over homework had been preserved in the center's heritage exhibit, a humble artifact that represented the ordinary beginnings of an extraordinary transformation. The briefing room hummed with controlled excitement as engineers and scientists made final preparations for the launch. At the center of the activity stood Elon Musk, now 60, his hair grayer but his intensity unchanged. Beside him was Roger Dalton, who had postponed retirement repeatedly to see the Mars Habitat project through to completion. "The Martinez family," Musk acknowledged as they entered. "Just in time. We were discussing the final habitat integrity reports. The simulations have exceeded even our most optimistic projections." Miguel's atmospheric regeneration system performed at 103% of expected efficiency during extended testing, Dalton added, his former skepticism long since replaced by genuine respect. "The redundancy features proved unnecessary, though I'm still glad we included them." The older engineer's eyes twinkled at Miguel. Their early conflicts evolved into a productive partnership that had benefited both. As the technical briefing continued, Sarah found herself observing the scene with a sense of wonder that had never fully dissipated, despite years of integration into this world of innovation and advancement. The language of aerospace engineering had become familiar, yet she still occasionally marveled at hearing her children speak it with such fluency, at seeing their ideas manifested in technology that would soon leave Earth's atmosphere. When the briefing concluded, Musk held them back as others filed out toward their launch positions. "There's something we need to discuss before we proceed." Sarah felt a momentary tightness in her chest. Years of hard experience had taught her to brace for complications whenever unexpected conversations arose. "The Habitat module carries a dedication plaque," Musk explained, his expression uncharacteristically hesitant. "Tradition dictates recognition of key contributors. The team has made a unanimous recommendation that I fully support." He handed Sarah a tablet, displaying an image of the plaque already mounted inside the Habitat module. At its center were words that caused her breath to catch: "The Martinez Habitat, dedicated to the power of recognition, the potential of unconventional." thinking, and the belief that bridges between worlds begin with a single act of kindness. "The first human dwelling on Mars will bear your family's name," Musk stated simply. It seemed fitting, given that its core technologies originated with Miguel's letter and evolved through your collaborative work. Sarah stared at the image, momentarily speechless. "I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything," Musk replied. "The results speak for themselves." He gestured around them, indicating not just the launch preparations, but the broader transformation their journey had catalyzed. What began Ace-1 family's story has become a paradigm shift in how we identify and develop human potential. The educational methodologies Lucia has pioneered are being implemented globally. The community-based innovation hubs you designed have become self-sustaining engines of advancement. He paused, his gaze moving between the Martinez family members. "The habitat technology will help humanity establish presence on Mars, but the systems you've built for cultivating human potential may ultimately prove more significant for our species' long-term flourishing." As they moved to their designated positions for the launch, Sarah found herself thinking of the letter. That simple act of hope that Miguel had undertaken without any realistic expectation of response. How many such letters went unanswered every day? How many brilliant minds remained undiscovered because the bridges between their reality and opportunity never materialized? Yet their story had changed that equation, not just for one family, but for thousands of others. The pathways they had forged had become highways, accessible to those with the talent and determination to traverse them regardless of circumstance. The rejection that had nearly derailed their journey had transformed into a system designed specifically to prevent such rejections from determining human potential. In the launch viewing area, Sarah found herself standing beside Mrs. Patel, now in her 80s, but still sharp and engaged as senior community advisor to the initiative. The elderly woman, who had once brought extra food to their apartment during their hardest times, now oversaw programs that connected retired professionals with young innovators, creating bridges across generations as well as socio-economic divides. "Did I ever tell you," Mrs. Patel said as they watched the final countdown preparations, "that my husband worked as a janitor at a research laboratory in Mumbai? He would bring home discarded technical journals and read them by lamplight, teaching himself engineering principles he never had the opportunity to study formally." Sarah shook her head, realizing there was still so much she didn't know about the woman who had been their first bridge to possibility. "He built a water filtration system for our village, using only materials he could salvage," Mrs. Patel continued. "The engineers at his laboratory never knew that the man who cleaned their floors had solved a problem they had been working on for months." Her eyes glistened with memory. "When I see what your family has accomplished, not just the technology, but the pathways you've created, I think of him and all the others whose brilliance never found expression because the world wasn't designed to see it." The countdown reached its final minutes. On the massive launch pad, the rocket stood poised for departure, containing within it not just advanced technology, but the manifestation of dreams that had once seemed impossibly distant. The Martinez habitat would soon begin its journey to another world, a bridge between planets born from a bridge between human potential and opportunity. Lucia slipped her hand into Sarah's on one side, Miguel on the other, the three of them connected in this moment as they had been throughout their journey. "Full circle," Lucia murmured. The final countdown began, numbers echoing through the viewing area as anticipation built to its peak. When the massive engines ignited, the roar vibrated through the ground beneath their feet, through their bodies. A physical manifestation of the power required to break free of Earth's gravity. As the rocket rose gradually at first, then with increasing speed, tears streamed freely down Sarah's face, not just for the technological achievement unfolding before, her, but for the human journey it represented. From a cramped apartment with past due notices on the table to this moment of transcendent possibility, their path had never been straight or easy, but had ultimately led to transformation beyond anything they could have imagined. "When I was little," Miguel said, his voice barely audible above the rocket's diminishing roar, "I used to imagine building bridges to other worlds. I never thought it would actually happen." "You built more than you know," Sarah replied, squeezing his hand. "Not just to Mars, but between people, between communities, between potential and possibility." As the rocket disappeared into the bright Florida sky, its contrail marking humanity's latest reach toward the stars, Sarah thought of all the letters being written at that very moment. By children with dreams too big for their circumstances, by minds with solutions to problems others hadn't even recognized, by innovators whose unconventional thinking might hold keys to humanity's future challenges. The difference now was that those letters had somewhere to go, someone to read them, systems designed to recognize the spark of brilliance regardless of its origin. The bridges they had built would carry not just their family, but countless others, toward futures limited only by imagination rather than circumstance. "What happens next?" Mrs. Patel asked softly, her gaze still fixed on the disappearing rocket. "Everything," Sarah answered, her heart full with the certainty that their story's ending was merely the beginning of a new reality, one where kindness recognized potential, where bridges connected worlds, and where the most powerful force for transformation was the simple, profound act of truly seeing another's capabilities and responding with opportunity rather than rejection.